Hey, Stacey David here with Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This podcast is about all things automotive from any time, any place, and beyond. All right, let's get to it. You know, one of the biggest questions that we get, and that I get when I'm out walking around, going to car shows, people come up and they're like, how do I sell my classic vehicle? Do I go to an auction? How do I know the value? Who do I talk to? Who do I trust? Do I consign it? Do I sell it myself? Do I not sell it? What do I do? Well, the next guest that I've got on here, you're going to enjoy this. This is Chris Picconi. He is with Classic 4x4. And if you're not familiar with that, you need to check out his podcast, Classic 4x4. He does some great stuff. He is a specialist in the 4x4 world. Does all kinds of great things. He's a Jeep guy. Even the information you're about to hear as far as buying and selling stuff isn't just 4x4 specific. It stuff that will go into cars as well. So you're going to enjoy this. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Stacey, thank you so much for having me today.
Okay, let's fill everybody in a little bit on your background. Okay, so did you grow up a car guy? What's your history?
So I have a unique background. I'm not the normal, truck guy, like a car truck guy. I didn't grow up in the Midwest somewhere with a dad who would take me out to the outbuilding to tinker around with, with the flat fender or the truck out in the outbuilding that we built together. I wasn't that guy, but I always loved cars and trucks. When I was a little kid, especially watching movies like Goonies and Back to the Future and seeing, in Goonies, the first XJ Cherokee, the first time I ever saw an XJ Cherokee, or Back to the Future, the first time I ever saw a CJ7,
Oh, yeah.
Or like one of the original, 22R, Toyota SR5 pickup trucks, like that really, really, I gravitated towards those, and there was always a love, and that's what sparked my love for cars and trucks. And I have a unique background before I founded Classic 4x4, and really dedicated my life and my career to my passion, which is classic custom modified trucks and 4x4s. I actually started out my career as a real estate investment banker. I used to raise capital for publicly traded real estate.
Until we drug you over to the dark side. Huh?
Yeah. So I did that for a decade for a very prominent real estate securities investment manager. And in 2008, as you can probably tell, they didn't need guys to raise capital for publicly traded real estate anymore after 2008. So I actually reinvented myself and went into automotive private equity, and I worked helping, I actually ended up handling all the M&A, corporate and business development for a portfolio of automotive related businesses that, I started in one of the divisions, the retail division, came up through that and ended up heading up corporate and business development, new business development, M&A, and building the portfolio from 4 automotive related businesses to 7 automotive related businesses doing,
so you understand the money aspect of things.
Yes, I'm analytical, but at the end of the day, I'm a sales guy, but with an analytical background. I could always talk. That's my parents always said, you don't shut up. You could always talk, right? It led me to a pretty good career. So,
now you said that you grew up watching the shows and stuff. So you grew up watching trucks and those kind of things.
That is where my love and that little spark in me, that really, drove my love for classic custom and modified trucks and 4x4s, right? Because I didn't have that upbringing. So yours truly, Stacey David, is the one that really sparked that love in me, that passion that ended up, after having a very successful career, that's now what I dedicate my life to with classic 4x4.
Now, do you turn your own wrenches? Do you do your own restoration work, or do you have a shop, or what do you do?
I do. I've got a 2,500 square foot garage where I keep my own personal collection, and I will put it to you this way: am good enough with turning a wrench to get myself into trouble and creating a bigger problem, right?
Yeah.
So
but you're smart enough to see that, so that's good.
and I know what my limitations are. So I have a great group of craftsmen that I have met throughout the years, body guys, painters, interior mechanics that focus on different areas, not technicians, right? Today's guys that are coming out of the technical schools, they're technicians. They're essentially computer programmers, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about true mechanics, right?
Yeah,
that can
absolutely.
diagnose, that doesn't just throw parts at something, can really diagnose and repair something. So
problems. Yeah.
I leverage on those amazing craftsmen to really, elevate and restore and, maintain my own personal collection.
Nice. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Classic 4x4. Obviously, you have your podcasts and stuff, but other than that, your business specializes in helping people sell their vehicle, correct?
Correct. So what we do at Classic 4x4 is we are a marketing and advisory firm that just focuses on classic, custom, modified trucks and 4x4s. We handle every aspect of our clients' sale of their classic, custom, modified truck or 4x4.
So if a guy wants to sell his K5 Blazer or his C10 or his Power Wagon or his Jeep CJ or whatever, he can come to you. You'll basically assess the value of it and find a market for it, correct?
Correct. Yep. So my first step in the process is the evaluation process, right? So let me understand the vehicle, get me pictures, I get as much information as I possibly can to evaluate it. And then how that translates to the desirability in the market, and then how that translates into a valuation. And then I give the clients...
Now that brings me to the main question that I want to get to, because I know that it's got to be probably one of the most frustrating things for you when a person comes in and they think they've got something that has a certain value based on maybe what they saw at the auction. How do you approach that? How do you realistically have them come to terms that maybe they're upside down in this vehicle, maybe it's not worth as much as they thought, maybe it's worth more, maybe they got the wrong color? How do you handle that?
So that's a great question, because it's not as prominent as you think it is, because as you would think, and I'll tell you why, it's baked into my process. And the first question, as I'm gathering information and I'm really evaluating the truck or 4x4, is one of the things that people ask is, don't you want to know what I want for it? And I say, no, actually, I don't want to know what you want for it, because I am the expert. I'm a student of the classic custom modified truck and 4x4 markets, right? When I'm not tinkering around in my garage, I'm sitting in front of 4 screens watching the auctions online and the online auctions and also the physical auctions, looking at transactions. I'm looking at the data, right? And I'm the one that presents the client with the valuation. I give them a range depending on the vehicle. It's $5,000 to $10,000, and I present the client with the valuation, but I also present them with the hard data, the actual comps that have traded in the past 3 months.
So important. So important.
Yes. So I'm very fortunate. I have access to that data. I pay dearly for that data, but I have access to that data. So I will present them and say, here's your vehicle, here's the desirability, here's the good, here's the bad, here's where it fits into the market, and here's 3 to 5 recent comparable transactions that have happened in the past, 3 months. And I present them with that valuation. And interestingly enough, right, I will tell you, a third of the people tell me, wow, that's more than I thought I could get for that.
Yeah.
A third say, well, that's in line. And then the other third say, oh, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, my truck is worth way more. And it's like, okay, not a problem. Worst case is I made a new friend today, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or they follow it up with, well, I saw one sell at Barrett-Jackson for, fill in the blank. And there's so many aspects of that, of what drives that. I tell people, it's like when you get 2 millionaires together and they both want the same vehicle, they don't care.
Yep.
It becomes about outbidding their buddy. I've seen it happen. I've watched it happen. Yep. And it drives the market up to some lucky seller where all of a sudden his little vehicle that was not supposed to bring anything quadruples in price. And the whole world goes, oh, they're hot now.
Yeah.
So I know that's got to be a challenge for you to be able to handle that. That brings me up to my next question. What do you think? Now, this is your personal opinion, Chris's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the auctions? Do you think, have they hurt the industry? Have they helped the industry? What do you see? Because there's some aspects about the auctions I think that have really hurt this industry, but it's also nice to see things bringing money like that. What is your take on that, and how do you see the auction world going? Is it going to
So
continue the way it is? Is it going to get hotter? What do you think? Because that's where people are coming to you to sell things. So,
and I'll tell you, if any of our listeners from the Classic 4x4 podcast, my podcast, are listening out there, they know that I have very strong opinions on this. And I will tell you right out of the gate, auctions are only help our business because they create a transparent, fair marketplace, right?
Yeah.
And they create liquidity in our market, right? So they're amazing, and they're amazing, highly functioning marketplaces, right? What we've seen change over the past couple years is, back in the day, you had what we call the physical or the in-lane auctions, which were, you had to pay to transport your car to this physical in-lane auction. And they still exist. And that's where most of the big numbers come from. But those big numbers also come with big fees, right? So the in-lane auctions, though they bring great numbers, they have hefty seller fees, hefty buyer fees, slotting fees, and the transport to get the truck there. And if it doesn't sell through, you have to transport it back, right?
Yeah.
So one of the biggest shift changes we've seen in the marketplaces has been a move towards online auctions.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
It creates an immense amount of efficiency. The fees are very reasonable. If they have a seller fee, it's very nominal, $99, $100, $200. The buyer fees also extremely nominal, well under 10%, 4.5%, 5%, 6%, 6.5%. They're very, very reasonable, right? The only difference is you don't get to see the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So
you can't walk around it.
Yeah, so you are dependent on that seller's ability to present that vehicle correctly in the marketplace, right? So
and
there's
that gets into the thing that I think where auctions are really bad, where I warn people you have to know what you're looking for, because there's a lot of shysters out there, not the auction houses, but the people that are throwing these things in, polishing a turd and putting it out there because they know the people don't have the opportunity to really look it over. And then you get that auction vehicle. And I guess that's where you would come in, be really important, because you actually look the vehicle over and represent it, correct?
Yep. And that's part of my process is, once we go through the evaluation process, we enter into an agreement. And then, selling a truck is it's like painting. Right.
Yeah.
It's all in the preparation. Right.
Oh,
so, the first step of my process is I have a
That's
group
good. I
of
hope people take that advice that you just said and look at it.
It's all in the preparation and the strategy. The sale is the easy part. Preparing the vehicle for sale is the difficult part. And that's a lot of my value proposition. So the big thing that I do before I even represent a vehicle, after we sign an agreement, before I bring it to market, is I have a third-party inspection done. An objective third-party inspection. I also, once I get that back, I will send my photographer out there to take, and again, I have photographers and inspectors all over the country. I have a great team of very talented individuals that know what they're looking at, know how to picture these vehicles, and they'll take hundreds and hundreds of high-quality digital images of the truck or 4x4, startup videos, walk-around videos, the whole 9 yards. And then I take all that information along with the information that I compile from my client and give it to my copywriter. And the copywriter writes a very intuitive, honest, transparent description of the vehicle, right?
Nice.
And that's how I mitigate a lot of that risk is, and I also won't represent vehicles from people that are just, putting a different color lipstick on the same old pig. There's a lot of guys out there that are spraying,
standards.
Yes. And that's just who I am, because I have a reputation also.
Sure.
And believe it or not, where most of my client referrals come from? Yes, from the the clients that I represent and sell their trucks and 4x4s for them.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, from the people on the other end of that transaction, the buyers.
Can't get enough gears? Make sure to check out the Tales of a Gearhead podcast, where Stacey brings a lifetime of automotive knowledge, friendships, and expertise to the listener. Also, check out our social media channels for updates and videos of Gears projects, as well as special contests, giveaways, and events. If you have a vehicle you want to enter into What Are You Working On?, go to staceydavid.com and submit it. There's also the online store and tons of other Gearhead information that will encourage you to get out there, build something, and go drive it.
What is your percentage that you take?
So I do take a percentage, but that's part of the success fee, which is when I actually when the car gets sold.
I take your firstborn child.
Yes,
or your Bronco. Which one is it going to be?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, your listeners are going to be very pleasantly surprised. So the first is when we enter into an agreement, it's a $399 preparation fee, which helps to offset the cost of the inspector, the photographer, and the copywriter, which are all professionals. So
yes.
It doesn't cover the full cost. I mean, it's actually the preparation costs me, depending on the vehicle, $1,000 to a little bit more, but that $399 helps to offset it.
Sure.
I'm okay to start out in the hole because I'm confident in my abilities to successfully execute the sale and sell through the vehicle. Nice. And that's where my other fee comes in, which is a success fee. So once I've created the go-to-market strategy, executed that go-to-market strategy in those different marketplaces, both classified auction, direct to collector, direct relationships. And then I solidify the sale, solidify the sale. There's a couple parts of the post-sale that I'll talk about too, but that is when once my client gets paid, I am due a success fee, right? Which my client pays me. They get paid the full amount for the vehicle that they sell, and then they owe me a success fee. And for any vehicle that sells under $99,999 or less, it's 6.5% of the sale price, and anything over $100,000, it's 5% of the sale price.
That's very nice. Okay, a question for you. In your opinion, because a lot of people are going to want to hear this, because of where you are in that market and what you do, give us your top 5 4x4 vehicles to get or collect. In other words, if a guy came to you and said, Chris, what's a vehicle that I should invest in? If I want to get something that I think will be valuable down the road, or I just won't lose my shirt on. What do you think? Give me your top 5, Broncos, K5s, whatever. What do you think? Go ahead.
So the first is hands down, and I'll take a step back here, is we saw a couple of years ago when Ford announced the new Bronco was coming out into the market. Everybody clamored for first gen Broncos, right? Mm-hmm. And those things went through the roof. Well, that cycle is coming to roost right now, and now they're pulling back. But my point there is the number one on that list is by far the International Scout. Right. We're seeing that same, I call it the Bronco effect. Now that Volkswagen Group has announced that they're going to bring the Scout brand back as an EV, Scouts right now, Scout 2, both the short wheelbases. I wish you hadn't
said that because I haven't found a Scout yet. I'm still looking. So we're going to hold this podcast until I find one, because I want an early one, man.
So within the Scouts, though, so there's opportunity there. We're going to see those continue to appreciate, in my opinion. And where I see the most opportunity isn't in the short wheelbase Scout 2s, is in the Terras and the Travelers, right?
Yeah.
The Terras and the Travelers.
Anyway.
They were the longer wheelbase ones. The Terras were the pickup truck, and the Travelers were the longer wheelbase with the hard top, the removable hard top. There's some value there. There's a lot of value there. Number 2 is some of what I call the modern classics, right? Yeah. They're the late 80s, early 90s classic trucks. And I'll give you an example because I just bought one of these. I just bought a 1990 Chevy K5 Blazer, right? Yeah. So, and we're talking, it's a 1990.
We're still talking square body type, body style.
Last generation of the square body, right?
Yeah.
But these trucks have modern amenities. They have the 350 that is fuel injected. They have air conditioning, automatic transmissions. They have power windows. So though it's a classic truck, it's more of a modern classic truck. You're getting a lot of those creature comforts, and they're undervalued in the market right now. I think that's true with some of the later OBS Ford Broncos, the K5 Blazers, that are early and mid 90s. Definitely an opportunity there.
Yeah.
Another one, the third one I'll give you, which this vehicle recently saw a full cycle, right? Yeah. So the FJ40, 43, 45 Land Cruisers, they were hot. 5 years ago, a fully restored, beautiful FJ40 would cost you $80,000, $90,000, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sadly, the importers have brought a ton of inventory from overseas, mostly South America and Middle East. And what's happened is with all that inventory that's come in, the imported inventory, it's, simple economics, supply and demand. Sure. They've added a ton of supply into a market that even if it has consistent demand, which it ended up having declining demand, it drove prices down. So we've seen FJ40s bottom out. I mean, there was a period of time about 6-8 months ago, you could buy a beautiful, fully restored, nut and bolt, frame off, fully restored, imported FJ40 for $22,000, $23,000, right?
Yeah,
that
somebody would have 50 or 60 in it.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So everything comes full circle. That has bottomed out. They are starting to appreciate, but believe it or not, you can still get, what was 5 years ago, an $80,000, FJ for still in like the 20s or 30s. And that's fair. There's definitely opportunity there. And I will say some of the earlier trucks, we've talked about generational change in the markets and demand. Some of the early trucks, I am really starting to see like the Ford, the fridge generation, right? The fridges, some of the, not so much the bump sides are doing good numbers, but a Ford fridge generation or the dent sides are doing big numbers right now.
Oh yeah.
But the bump sides and the fridges which are like the 60s, like the late 50s into the 60s Ford trucks. There's an immense amount of value there, especially with the fridges. I love the Ford fridge body style, right?
Yeah, the Fords are really coming on.
Yep.
What do you think about Jeeps?
Jeeps right now, where there is a ton of value is in CJ5s, and that's actually you. Did you just read my mind, Stacey? That was going to be my next one. So, the CJ5s were built from 1955 to 1983. So through several owners, you had the early, the mid, and the late CJ5s. But what happens is when you build essentially the same vehicle, there were some changes, some minor body style changes in the stamp, in the body panel stamping, and
I just looked at one the other day to buy.
And I will tell you, and it fully restored, what was it, 8, 9, 10 grand?
Oh, this one needed to be restored. They were a little high. It had a rusty body. It needed a complete restoration. So he was asking a bit much, but he hasn't sold it yet.
Yep.
So got the factory metal hardtop on it.
Wow,
with the roll-up windows and stuff. That's pretty rare. I wanted it for the top. It needs a body replacement.
I think they're called the Meyer tops, right? I think that's what they're called. Yep.
Yeah, made by the Meyer snowplow people, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So they actually came with that factory hard top, that metal hard top, and the snowplow. That was like a package. But the CJ5s right now, there's a ton of value, ton of opportunity. They were built from 1955 to 1983. There's a ton of them out there, right? Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, when you build a truck for that many generations, right, there's just so much inventory out there. There's still so many that, even though they rusted out, that are still alive, that when you have so much supply and so much availability with moderate demand, prices are low. You can get a fully restored, beautiful, early and even late CJ5 right now for 8 to 12 grand. That's opportunity there.
And they're great Jeeps. They're just great Jeeps. They're the classic.
The last one I'll give you for Jeeps, which this actually tugs at my heartstrings, which again, we're going to talk about. This truck had a full cycle, is the Grand Wagoneers, the SJ Grand Wagoneers, right? They were hot for,
and I love
beautiful.
The two-door
I
Jeep.
love them too.
Yeah.
So the SJ Grand Wagoneers, right, outside of the 1991 final editions, which are still doing great numbers, but anything that's rust-free, that's either restored or all original with low mileage, the original 360, the Quadra-Track, and the Chrysler, 727 automatic transmission, that's in good condition. Those things were doing crazy numbers, just like the FJs, crazy numbers 5 years ago, 80, 90, 100,000. Believe it or not, you can get those for roughly, in good condition, the mid-20s to mid-30s. There's opportunity there. And I'm going to give all of our listeners a little nugget out there. There was, before the Grand Wagoneer was introduced, prior to that, AMC actually tested the market with a vehicle called the Wagoneer Limited. Do you remember the Wagoneer Limiteds?
I do. Yes.
Yes. So they were the precursor to the Grand Wagoneer. And if you like that Grand Wagoneer, like, that we call them the American Range Rover, right? With those plush interiors, power everything. And you don't want to spend, 35 grand for a good condition one. Go out there and look at a late 70s, early 80s. I think they finished making them in 82 or 83. They're a Wagoneer, but the Wagoneer Limited trim line. AMC did this for years, where they would test the market with a platform and add a trim to it, and if it was successful, they would make it its own model. So the precursor
to the wagon
Wagoneer
body forever. I think they started that body back in the 60s.
Oh, that SJ body's been around for it went from the mid 60s to like 1991.
Yeah, they changed the grills and headlights and that kind of thing.
So those are my buys out in the market. Those are my top 5 out there.
Those are good picks. And I think that's really good advice. Well, Chris, thanks for being on here, man. Hopefully that gives people some insight on what they can do. And how do they contact you?
Check out my website. It's classic4x4.com. So classic4x4.com. You can see my process, my fees, submit your vehicle, your truck out there. That's all I do is classic custom modified trucks and 4x4s. That's what I know. That's my wheelhouse, and I don't deviate from it, though people do ask me to help them with their cars, and I just refer them to somebody else. Check us out on all the social channels. It's classic4x4_trucks. So classic 4x4_trucks on all the social channels. And, most importantly, listen to the Classic 4x4 podcast, where I had a very interesting guest on recently. And the guy who I deemed the godfather of trucks and 4x4s, a guy by the name of Stacey David. You may know him.
James Brown. Well, listen, when these people call up, when you run across a Power Wagon carryall, you let me know. I've been after one of those forever. That's like the wagon of the Power Wagon. And
I am very familiar with it.
Oh, yeah. So, most of the guys restoring back originals, so they're parade vehicles and they want stupid money for them, or they're completely rusted out. So I'm looking for that one that I can do some fun stuff to. But then a carryall is hard to come by. But
you'll get an email from me when that client reaches out to me and says, "Hey, what is this thing?" Right?
Yeah, what is this thing? I don't know what this is. It's some wagon thing. It ain't worth nothing. Chris, thank you, man. We'll be in touch with you.
Thank you, Stacey. Greatly appreciated.
All right, that's our show for today, which means you need to get out there and start working on something. Spend some time turning wrenches. You'll love it. Also, make sure to check out our website, staceydavid.com. We got all kinds of new products, some great stuff there you're going to love. Also, make sure you check out our social media. That's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all at Official Stacey David. Our social media is where you're going to find all the bonus content, the giveaways, the contests, the trivia. We even have extra viewer projects that we show everybody to focus on what you're working on. YouTube is where you're going to be able to find all of our episodes of Gears, past, present, and future. I know a lot of you guys ask about that. That's where you can see them. All right, that's all we got. We'll see you next time.